Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the June 5th patch for epicseven, and while initially this appeared to be, at least to me, more of a filler or maybe an unexpected patch, as again we are expecting Aria, it was just revealed to me that we'll also be having trial the constellations, I guess, as well, which is pretty cool. However, in terms of what we'll break down today, I will give some of my initial thoughts again on Aria, make a video for her once she of course comes out, but also kind of give my initial thoughts towards this new piece of content, in addition to the new EE that was announced, which I do think is pretty insane. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing we have to talk about is the trial of the constellations. Now this is an account rank 50 or above piece of content, so I'd say it's maybe more mid to like a late game focused. In terms of this piece of content, however, it is season based PVE content, so it's similar to that of, well, something like the Rift. However, in addition to this, there are 4 different difficulties for this, and there are also different elements, as you can see on screen right now. Moving from this, however, you should know that this trial does not give account exp, hero exp, expected things that, you know, are basically, I guess, that would progress your account in general, which is more of the reason why I think that this is a piece of content that might be worth doing later on in your account. However, in terms of the way that the content works, it does act as a PvE piece of content that requires you to have certain elements. You can't just run any unit that you want, so this does feel kind of similar to that of again, some of the more seasonal PvE content that comes back once in a while, including, again, as previously mentioned, Rift. Now, in addition to this, there are different number of turns for certain, I guess, fights, as is described here. But in addition to this, there are effects from the battle that make honestly the encounter pretty interesting and in depth. That includes the fact that they have things like the constellation energy, which I guess is effectively the rage or the enrage mechanic if you take too long or if you meet a certain condition. In addition to this, however, of course, what everyone is most interested in for this content is the rewards. You know, we have the Trial of Constellations 88 equipment rewards, Starfall coins, slot points, and more. And while the 88 equipment and the Starfall coins are more obvious for what you would be doing this for, what is most important is actually the fact that the slot points and some of the rewards that you get from completing this content will be reinvested back into the content so that you can actually upgrade or make the new or I guess further or future runs more successful and easier. Now, in addition to this, if you're curious, again, this does look pretty interesting in terms of how you'll be upgrading characters. From what I see right now, this is based on their constellation, which is pretty cool. However, what I do think is also interesting is that if you take a look at the rewards that we have here, these rewards are pretty good. And actually, if we just take a moment to swap from this over to here, there was a bit of a preview video from G-Clef and the epicseven team where they showed off a bit more of the mechanics. They did also show some of the gear here with things like these level 88 gear, having maybe decent but not absolutely insane substats. Again, for this piece of gear, I'm sure people would rather it have like 9% and max rolls 5 speed. However, from the store itself, these items actually, if I'm not mistaken, if I can find a screenshot of it, oh, this is really weird. I had a screenshot of it before, but in case you're curious, this speed set piece right here is actually max rolled. It's an HP neck and more designed for effect resistance or for soul weavers / knights. This is max rolled, which I think is pretty cool. But as you can see through as they basically go through the mechanics of the bosses, they are pretty unique. And if you are someone that's really interested in end game or like late game PvE, it is honestly something that's really incredible, just in terms of how in depth it looks. Now, if you aren't someone that of course wants to play PvE, good news for you. Someone like Tristan Wolf, or maybe even myself, will probably cover this and give you a more condensed or easy simplified guide to this, as it doesn't seem too insane. But if you take a look at the piece that was dropped here, of course I can't read Korean, but I can assume that this is probably something, the top here is something like HP defense or crit damage. And then the 3 here, of course, is speed. And then based on the similar text lining for the bottom 2, I'm assuming this is crit chance and crit damage. Again, 32, 32 equipment score with 4 and 7 almost max rolls for crit damage and crit rate is pretty decent. However, you have to keep in mind again that this is an 88 piece, which means that they're rolling, and in terms of their value, it might be a bit more suspect. But in truth, like as you'll see pretty briefly through the mechanics, it is a very different kind of experience, and it is a little bit interesting to see some of the characters that they're using here. They're trying to experiment and cook it up with like Vivian and Violet and Charles and stuff. Charles obviously for his buff, but it is a definitely more interesting piece of content compared to some of the other PVE released, I guess, like usual suspects that we've seen. This isn't just another ancient inheritance. Also interesting note here, but as you can see through some of the perdition challenges, these effects and these buffs that you have to affect or basically deal with or accommodate for are pretty crazy. And as a whole, I won't go too far in depth into the Trial of the Constellations, as again, it hasn't been released. But if we take a look back specifically at the update patch as well, we have Aria. Now, if you aren't familiar with Aria already, her kit is pretty ridiculous. She increases the soul burn consumption of the enemy by 100%, effectively doubling it. And in addition to this, she has an insane amount of effect resistance that she provides to herself just for stacking HP. On top of this, she does most of her damage through her S3. However, her S1 also does a decent amount of damage too, as it does act as a two-prong or two-hit acting strike. Now, the reason why this is crazy, however, is that in addition to scaling with both HP and crit damage, and again being a damage dealer, any HP that she has will then convert directly to effect resistance. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, some early, I guess, like I think like talks or research into this character have shown that she actually scales for every 10,000 HP, she gains 65 effect resistance or 60 effect resistance, which is crazy because it's honestly not that unrealistic to get something like, again, 30,000 or even 40,000 HP on this character, as she shares the same constellation as Dark Corvus. And if you aren't familiar with Dark Corvus has a ridiculous amount of health in general. Now, in terms of her damage, it is also pretty respectable, but more than anything else, the fact that she gives the team 40 effect resistance, and in addition to, apologies, the insane amount of effect resistance that she has in her kit already to herself, it will feel very difficult, at least in the upcoming or the more immediate future, to try and debuff anyone on Aria's team, if not just debuffing Aria herself. Now, beyond this, I do think that in terms of her value, she poses herself as like a good anchor, both against cleave or against more speed focused players, and will definitely slow down the game by quite a bit. But in terms of this, if you are someone that wants to pick up Aria, I do think she's going to be pretty meta changing. There isn't a lot of downside to picking her, as again, she essentially works in a variety of different pieces of content or in a variety of different kind of teams. You can maybe not quite put her in the same level as Emma Larunka. Emma Larunka does also kind of present herself as the omnipotent, you use her in any sort of team composition. But in terms of her viability, I think she's going to be a must pull and definitely very strong. Moving past this, though, I do want to mention, and although I've already made a video about like the balance patch, which a lot of people consider to be kind of mid, I do want to say that this new EE that they've added to STRAZE is pretty crazy. The new EE gives him crit rate, but in addition to this, it reads that when the enemy is defeated by his S3, you extend the buff duration of the caster by 1 turn and grant an extra turn. Now, this is crazy for a number of reasons, but the most prominent, I'd say, for this is that, number one, if you have something like Benimaru's Tachi on him, you provide yourself the attack and immunity buff at the start of your turn. And the thing is that if you use S3 and kill someone here, that not only means that you give yourself another attack buff that you can use for the next turn, it also gives yourself, well, less relevantly, an immunity for, or rather an invincibility for the next turn as well. Again, to be clear, I don't necessarily think that the invincibility is too crazy, as again, after you use this S3, you're already kind of not taking any damage anyways. However, this extra turn does mean that what you can do is S3, and with your follow-up S2, you actually won't be countered, or you won't get or sorry, I should say you won't die from a counter, or you won't get absolutely one shot for actually using your S2 after taking the extra turn. But I do think that this is a pretty decent EE, just because again, now it allows you to perform an S3 that deals a load of damage but also strip immediately after. Anyways, though, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Again, the new PvE content looks crazy. Aria looks crazy. STRAZE's EE looks amazing. And again, epicseven's kind of eating good right now. If you're someone that likes this content, well, you got something to look forward to. As always, though, that's going to be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.